What is the number one mistake people make when they're under suspicion or under arrest for driving while intoxicated in Fort Worth or the surrounding cities? It's this. Doing field sobriety tests in the field. You have to understand, when police officers are investigating you under suspicion of DWI, they can request and even be coercive, making you feel like you are forced to do standardized field sobriety tests. You're not. You can absolutely refuse them. Why is this the biggest mistake people make? Because standardized field sobriety tests, despite their name, really are not very accurate at all in determining whether you're intoxicated. You have to consider first if you're even eligible to take these tests. If you're over the age of 65, or have some type of physical disability, learning disability, or communication issue, these tests are not for you. They will do them anyways, and they'll use them to judge whether you're intoxicated, but you're not even really eligible to take them. What's also important is even though these tests have been around for a really, really long time, they do a poor job of actually determining with any accuracy whether you're intoxicated. What do I mean by that? You could fail the field sobriety tests for any number of reasons, and then later on provide a specimen of your breath or blood. Breath you should refuse, blood you should refuse. But if they get a search warrant and get your blood anyways, sometimes that specimen will show that you're under the legal limit, but you failed your field sobriety tests. Why is that important? Because the state can choose to prosecute you anyway. How? If your alcohol concentration is under a 0.08, can you still be prosecuted for a DWI? That's because there's 3 different ways to prove that you're intoxicated for a DWI conviction. It is not having the normal use of your physical faculties, not having the normal use of your mental faculties due to the introduction of alcohol, a drug, a dangerous drug, or any combination thereof, in addition to a 0.08 or higher alcohol concentration. Why is this important? Even if you're under the alcohol concentration limit, that 0.08 standard, you can be prosecuted, arrested, convicted of driving while intoxicated. They would consider you a quote-unquote lightweight. What they mean by that is that even though your alcohol concentration is under the 0.08, you showed on your field sobriety tests that you weren't capable of operating a motor vehicle, that your mental or your physical faculties were impaired, and they are using the standardized field sobriety test to judge that. So let's talk about what those standardized field sobriety tests are. 1, the horizontal gaze nystagmus. This is known as the eye or pen test. What they're actually looking for is nystagmus. Nystagmus is the involuntary jerking of your eye. We actually all have nystagmus, and there's multiple different types of nystagmus that can exist. They are looking for something called horizontal gaze nystagmus, which is caused by the introduction of CNS depressants, central nervous system depressants, or dissociative anesthetics into your system. Alcohol is a CNS depressant. What that means is that under a certain test, they are stressing your eye to see if they can see that involuntary jerking. Nystagmus is something we all have naturally. You just can't naturally see it with the naked eye. When you introduce CNS depressants into your system or dissociative anesthetics like methamphetamine, you can see that involuntary jerking. That involuntary jerking can cause an officer to believe that you are under the influence or intoxicated by alcohol. When they combine that with the other 2 more physical tests, the walk and turn and the 1-leg stand, they can make the determination and even ask a judge or a jury to convict you of driving while intoxicated without a blood or breath specimen, or even with a blood or breath specimen that is under the legal limit. The walk and turn test and the 1-leg stand test are what we call divided attention tests. Just like driving, what the police officers are looking for is your ability to listen to instructions, receive information, make decisions based upon that information, and perform a physical act. Walk and turn test is a walk down the line, but it's not that simple. They're giving you specific instructions that you have to follow, like stand heel to toe. When you step, your heel actually needs to touch your toe. If you turn, you leave your lead foot planted and take a series of small steps around. Failure to follow these instructions to the T are going to cause officers to believe that you're intoxicated, even to the point where they believe they have sufficient evidence without a breath or blood specimen to convict you. The 1-leg stand is also a divided attention test. It requires you to stand on 1 foot with your other foot raised at least 6 inches off the ground and balance like that for 30 seconds. Have you ever tried to do that? Not easy. It is likely that you will fail that test by their standard, which means that they now have evidence to arrest you, to charge you, and to convict you of driving while intoxicated. So, The biggest mistake we see people make in driving while intoxicated cases is believing that standardized field sobriety tests are required during the investigation portion of their case, and not understanding that they can actually refuse. Now, when you refuse field sobriety tests, you can almost rest assured you will be arrested. A refusal can be used against you in court as evidence of guilt, and certainly rises to the probable cause standard that law enforcement needs in order to make an arrest. However, without the field sobriety tests, it's very difficult for an officer, prosecutor, or a judge to determine that you were intoxicated without a breath or blood specimen. And even with a breath or blood specimen, depending upon what the answer to that test result is, there's so many arguments your attorney can make about the difference between your blood or breath alcohol concentration at the time of the test versus what it would have been at the time you were driving. This gives your attorney many more options in order to attack your case at different angles. One thing that's very difficult to overcome is you failing those field sobriety tests, even though they're not accurate, even though you may not be eligible. So don't make the mistake of performing them in the field. That's the biggest mistake you can make when you're under suspicion or under arrest for driving while intoxicated, is performing field sobriety tests in the field or back at the station. Just say no. If you have any other questions about helpful tips or tricks with driving while intoxicated investigations, or you yourself have been placed under arrest for a DWI offense, give us a call at Varghese Summersett, 817-203-2220.